one person watching now. I'm just going to tweet this before I get to you. I'll also have a look at my notifications. Nothing intelligent or important. 3 people watching now. I've just been listening to Daniel Sienkiewicz. You can guess why I'm using a different avatar. We know also why he won't have me on, and chose instead to have his very small pity party. If you go on Twitter, you will see a commentary I made of the stream because predictably I was hidden from the chat on both my accounts because Daniel cannot bear to hear my statements and my questions because he has no answer to them. So sadly, it has turned into another pity party. Where he gets stuck on is when I ask him how he's going to get what he wants done. And I recall that his answer is that he's going to establish shadow communities who will know to do the right thing when the opportunity presents itself. He's not the only one with this idea of kicking the can down the road. Academic Agent is also of the view that homeschooling his offspring will eventually result in future generations, his grandchildren, his descendants perhaps, overthrowing the current system. And another one is a young man called George Byron, who expects his grandchildren to sort the mess out. So that's a kind of solution that passes for solution in these circles. Why am I complaining about it? Because, well, I'm not white, am I? I think anyone who lives in the West has an interest in it. So if white people are not interested in protecting themselves or running the country and are more interested in just having their little pity parties called their echo chambers and their hug boxes to gather together to moan about the Jews, then I guess they have more or less consigned themselves to extinction. Enough of them have encountered me often enough to know what my solution is. And over the years, I think they've more or less accepted that they're not going to come up with anything more powerful than what I have, because secular Quranism is an idea that I conceived of in 2009, and it's been over a decade and nobody else has been able to come up with anything better. So they are left with the one of voting for the leader that will eventually deal with their problems, or doing the usual of, the Benedict option, also known as white flight, and, well, finding a log cabin and growing their own vegetables, that sort of thing. So not really, much of a fight, more of a retreat, which will, of course, encourage their enemies. But what are non-white people living in the West to do with this hopelessness of these so-called nationalists who really can't think themselves out of a paper bag and don't wish to? We know Daniel is an unmarriageable bachelor who won't upset any feminists because we know from his tweets that he is thirsty for women. So he's not going to say anything to upset them. And if they're going to be mean to him, then he can't possibly bear it. And therefore he's just going to hope for his fairy godmother or something to come by and, magically give him the solution. And he's prepared in the meantime to entertain pagans and assume that it is possible for social and political pariahs right at the bottom of the heap in the matriarchy are just going to create a religion that they don't even believe in and expect everybody above them who spits on them and pisses on them to follow their neo-pagan religion. And then eventually one of these days they're going to come into office and do it and impose their neo-pagan religion on their fellow white people after having kicked out all the people they don't want, i.e. the Jews, i.e. the Muslims, i.e. the non-whites, and then we can look forward to these neo-pagans having an American and European wars of religion to see which new pagan deity they're going to worship. Now we know that Daniel is one of those white nationalists who hate Jews so much that they reject all the Abrahamic faiths as Jewish and to be rejected, and therefore in his hatred he will assume that this new pagan future of the West is actually going to happen. And if it doesn't, he can go to his grave thinking it will happen, that future generations of white men will have this white heaven to look forward to. So I think I've said enough to make you aware that these people are never going to get anywhere, and by continuing with this idiotic fantasy, they are going to encourage their enemies, who will know that not only are they frightened and poor and low status, they are also learning disabled. And so they will double down on whatever they're doing, which is basically warehousing the white urban proletariat for extinction, because they're too busy claiming welfare to do the work that the immigrants are doing. So we have to remember what Daniel Sienkiewicz is. He is an anti-Semite. He is comprehensively rejecting the Abrahamic God because he hates Jews and Muslims, and he also hates Christianity, having been brought up as a Catholic. So what is he left with but neo-paganism? So he won't be going for Buddhism or Hinduism because it's not white. So he will rely on the people who think they can revive the extinct and dead deities of the Vikings and make all the people above them who piss on them and spit on them worship their pagan pantheon. That is the way forward for the echo chamber of Daniel Sienkiewicz. So as you can see, anti-Semitism is its own punishment, really. These people are hopelessly learning disabled. They don't want to learn, and they won't change their ways. And so what is to be done for people who've crossed oceans and continents, who've come to live in the West? I mean, I'm sure they're feeling a little dismayed. Did we come here, all the way here, crossing continents and oceans to be faced with the host population who are basically happy to to kill themselves, basically. I mean, they're going to be starting the Third World War. They're going to be doubling down on the oppression of their, well, really quite weak and learning disabled people whom they know they can continue to ignore and exploit, because these people like Daniel Sienkiewicz, are just too shit for brains to think themselves out of a paper bag. Daniel I think he believes in a fairy godmother who will, give these lost boys what they want. So it doesn't matter if you do the wrong thing, or, either because you're stupid or mad or evil. I don't think it matters, because the consequences are the same if you throw yourself in front of a car because you're stupid, or because you're mad, or because, I don't know. Anyway, the consequence is going to be, well, becoming a human version of roadkill. And they have the situation where these white men really don't understand, or don't care to understand, and they have the limited aim of going to their graves without having to admit their mistakes. This is the white way, it would appear. And there's nobody above them to show them a better way. I mean, I understand that, of course, they're not going to take it from me, of all people, right? I don't think they would have taken it from any white male either, because they wouldn't like to be told by anyone, I don't think, who, that Christianity is kaput, or all nearly 2,000 years of it. Liberalism is kaput, all nearly 250 years of it. So it is really the non-white Westerner who can cross continents and oceans to get here, who will be more likely to put two and two together and correct the mistakes of the past. Because these people would at least come from a culture that understands that they have to, well, have babies after getting married, and only after getting married, and that they have to have families and stay together as a family, and an extended family, and have communities, and have a community centre that isn't a pub, to keep their group in existence and apart from others. And immigrants who arrive are more anxious about their well-being, and therefore they will huddle together more, and for safety in numbers, and feel the need to keep to their own traditions, whatever they are, rather than to assimilate. Although there will be assimilationist tendencies within these communities, because people do get tired of being the odd one out and treated like freaks. So in the chat, I get, dumb comments by people like Christine. But then, she's female. She can't be expected to stick to any principle, because women have been programmed to go with whatever's mainstream, something, what they're basically like lionesses who never interrupt a fight between two rival lions, because they know it would be dysgenic to do so. Because what these lionesses want to do is they want to have the cubs of the winner, and he has to win by his own merit. And if they help him, they would upset the purpose of the game, which is to give birth to the cub of the winning male. And so, for this reason, women are not expected to support any principle. There's no need for them to support any principle. They just have to be totally materialistic and only go for the male who controls the resources. So the men who ingest the myth of feminism will fail to understand this. A few of them are beginning to get the idea, but they're too, it's too late. They're too old. They're not. They have no money. They are unattractive. They have mediocre minds, and even if they're nice enough people, they will be seen as repulsive to women because of their stupidity and poverty and low status. So the problem with Daniel Sienkiewicz is that he doesn't see it. He can't see it. He thinks. What did he say? He said Richard Spencer's getting his ideas from him. I hardly think so, Daniel. Daniel is okay. His idea is that as long as he doesn't associate with Nazis like OV, but is an anti-Semite, which he never stops reminding us about because he keeps talking about the kosher people. And there's no need for him to talk about the kosher people in any of his discourse in his most recent stream, because he could make his points without mentioning the Jews, but he's too dumb to see that. That is fundamentally his problem. He lacks a self-awareness to even know how dumb he is. And when he tried to explain Heidegger, that was laughable. But you see, mediocre intellects like Heidegger because what Heidegger says is obviously true. We should, we should live our lives with authenticity. We are here and we don't know what to do because we don't believe in God, and therefore we have to find our own way. This is the whole concept of existentialism, that we have to find our way because we don't believe in God, and we must do things our own way. But fundamentally, there's no difference between a nihilist and an existentialist, and this is one of the traps of Western philosophy. All these stupid students learning Western philosophy, talking in a way that would make everyone who didn't study philosophy hate them because of the long-winded jargon that they love to use to show off the little learning that they managed to acquire by using these words in sentences. We know that Greg Johnson praised Heidegger. But what is Heidegger fundamentally but a person brought up as Catholic who didn't believe in any Catholic principles? That's why he cooked up his idea of existentialism, which means we must all find our own way and we must live authentically. But what does it mean to be authentic? He didn't mention any principles, I don't think. Did he mention any principles? Because, if he talked about, oh, you can only be, you can only live authentically if you follow your principles, and then we would be right back to religion. But he didn't say that, and the people who follow him, who think him so clever, don't get it. So, what does it mean to live with authenticity? It just means feeling that you are living with authenticity. And this means for really stupid people, it's doing whatever feels right at the time, going with their idiotic opinions and their fancies and whims. In fact, behaving like a dithering woman with moods and the capriciousness of most women, following fashion. Are the other thinkers of nationalism any better? I don't think so. I mean, I, I go for Daniel because we've spoken before, and we kind of mix in the same circles. I know the people in his chat and the people who go on his streets, and it's more fun. I'm also susceptible to the weakness of just being, preferring the familiar to bigger channels with live chat that moves too fast, or live chats you've been hidden from because you criticize these YouTubers too much. But only two days ago, I think, I was talking to John Gisheler, and we tried to review Keith Woods, and he was basically unlistenable. So he's considered, one of the thought leaders of nationalism, but he was in fact unlistenable, and he recently had a conversation with Joel Davis, which is pretty much unlistenable, asking the dumb question of, which is better, liberalism or nationalism? And of course, anyone who's a nationalist won't even give the answer a second thought and think they already know the answer. And I was in the chat and knew that the chat would say nothing reflecting the content of what Joe Davis and Keith Woods were saying. So these set piece debates are really more displacement therapy. I guess they will just, do whatever they can to try all the wrong ways first before reluctantly adopting secular Quranism. Long after we're all dead, I'm sure, they will think, oh, well, better try that because we've tried all the wrong ways, our neo-paganism, our American wars of religion to decide which pagan deity to worship, or we may even have the happy outcome of America adopting secular Quranism, which means all its vassal states will also adopt secular Quranism, which means perhaps even the non-Western world adopting secular Quranism. So I still think things could flip, but only if people do the right thing. And I say people, well, I hope there will be more than one, but what I'm looking for is for just one person to have the courage of his or her convictions to do the right thing and say the right thing using his or her real name, and engage in the conversation in an honest and rational way. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, when you think of a global empire, the American global empire, and you can't find anyone who's honest and rational, prepared to ask the obvious question. They actually can't do it. The few who do lack the courage to associate themselves with it. And this, or they're just too low status to matter. Unfortunately, I mean, that is the case. So this is evidence that public intellectuals are just not fit for the purpose of discussing ideas, because they do not have the intellectual integrity to do so. Because I would have thought any intellectual who's concerned about his country would ask these obvious questions, but they're actually incapable of doing so. It's strange. I see all these people in the chat, but the counter says only one. Let me see if the other window is saying the same thing. It doesn't matter, but I wonder if it's a glitch or something more sinister. Who is defining what is wrong? Who is defining what is wrong? Asks Tinkle Tink. Obviously, good and evil would be defined in scripture. And anyone else who disagrees only has an opinion. But Tinkle Tink is an atheist, so you'll just have to, choose the opinion he likes best, because it fits in most with his emotions, I guess. What is religious? Well, religion is a moral system for the purpose of keeping the group in existence and apart from others. So it will have rules about what to do and what not to do, and what is commanded is good and what is forbidden is bad. It's very simple. So the pity of it is that, that all these sort of people who think themselves smarter than previous generations, people like Daniel, when he does suffer from a learning disability and, a defect of character. He can't express himself properly. But he's, I guess, fundamentally a nice guy. If you talk to him nicely, he'll talk to you nicely too. But he can't go beyond his limitations. But the people who like comforting things, like a old teddy bear with its ears falling off, they will go for people like Daniel because they want a group hug. They don't want to discuss new ideas. They just want a group hug because they know it's all over. It's all over for liberalism, it's all over for Christianity, and beyond that, what do these men hope for if they don't want to change their minds? I mean, the only thing they can hope for is that they go to their graves without the hated and feared new religion that will be adopted when Westerners regain their reason. It's not going to be Judaism. It's not going to be a Christian revival. It's not going to be Hinduism, and it's not going to be Buddhism. Will it be something like Scientology or some new idea that person is going to cook up. I don't think so. So we can see the effect of the feminization of Daniel Sienkiewicz and which leads eventually to infantilization. And so Daniel, he doesn't care, really. I mean, we know he's not going to get married. We know that he does desire women just because he keeps tweeting pictures of desirable women or women he finds desirable. He is so transparent that he doesn't know not to do it. Even when women complain. I mean, women who, are of the view, who are, well, I suppose I should say, white nationalist women, they also complain. Because it's irritating, I suppose. It's irritating to see your vulnerability, the vulnerabilities of the people who are supposed to be leading you. So, in his own pathetic little way, Daniel is a thought leader of the people who don't think Richard Spencer and the others are their thought leaders. Daniel is accessible, but he doesn't command any respect. But you see, when you think of Richard Spencer, who openly supports neoliberalism and neoconservatism, we already know that he's given up. He's basically rolled over and said, "I'll play ball. I'll do what you want me to do. Just let me back to where I once belonged in the mainstream because of my background, my parents' wealth. I deserve better than being stuck with brain dead, lame brain." What's the word? Yeah, degenerates, unmarriageable bachelors who do they know what they want? I don't think they do. I think, if they have any ambition, it would be to go to their grave before the adoption of secular Quranism. I mean, basically, that's it. That is what they hope for. Because even these lame brains know that if there is to be a correction, ever, it would be to reverse the policies of feminism. And the strongest idea, the strongest solution would be the book of rules that they hate and fear. But their limited aim is to go to their graves before this fact becomes clear. And that is why people like Daniel won't discuss it. They'll just pretend that, that eventually something will happen. But they know it won't, because they know they're not, the brightest bulb in a box, not the sharpest knife in a drawer. But what they can do, which is what low status males know they can do, which is to behave like women and withhold their cooperation. So that explains why, if there's anything the government wants them to do, that they will just say it's a conspiracy theory. They will cite their particular conspiracy theories and refuse to cooperate, even if sometimes it is for their own good. But anyway, that's how what they believe now. They believe that anything the government does is malign. So the latest thing is the monkeypox. So it was caused by the vaccines, and therefore there's some more bad stuff is going to happen about what the government is doing about monkeypox, and they will just deliberately refuse to believe what the government says and do the opposite of what the government asks them to do. And obviously, this is unsustainable. And we go back to the question of what non-white people ought to do, assuming, I guess they want to survive. It's particularly humiliating that, you cross continents and oceans just to come to a place that is going to be worse than where you came from. I mean, this is the anxiety that most immigrants have. Okay, if white people want to commit suicide, and okay, well that's and they can't be persuaded away from this course. Well, that's because they're old men who suffer from a learning disability, who just not going to change their ways, and they're not going to admit that they ever did anything wrong. So they're not going to change, and they have their limited aim. They're going to make sure they die before the correction occurs. So for immigrants fresh off the boat, what should they do? They should support secular Quranism, of course. That's what they should do. But they might be too assimilated now, and they might also, think like degenerate white people who basically don't want to climb out of the swamp that they find themselves in. They're in quicksand, but they just can't be bothered to struggle or call for help or follow any instructions given by anyone. But obviously, white people who can see the sense of practicing marriage and family values would see the sense of what I say. But what's stopping them from doing the right thing? Cowardice, I suppose, which is despicable. But that's how they mostly are. There are a few Muslims who they don't want to cooperate because it's but you're not even Muslim, blah blah. But they would be kind of low IQ or low in courage, and they're just not able to engage with it properly. It's like, well, we're more than you. How many secular Quranists are there? They're more Muslims, but they're going to be affected too when their Western nation becomes a failed state. But they can only follow the herd because there are some people who are just programmed to do that, and I guess it's useful in the same way that cattle is useful. Not for other cattle, but the farmers who breed them. So I'll go through the rest of the chat. And read my notifications. Yes, Christine doubtless wishes they would go back. But in a way, can you imagine a situation when things are really so bad, and all these sort of immigrants, that these people like Christine Ramsey hates, they're saying, right, we made a mistake, we're going back where we came from. And I think there will be a certain sadness when, I guess you're captain of a sinking ship, and like in the old days, you were expected to go down with your ship because it was considered a failure if you captained your ship so badly that it found itself to be sinking, and if you were rescued, you were just going to be so disgraced that your life wouldn't be worth living. So you opt to go down with your ship. Christine Ramsey claims to have strong principles, but what are they? What are they? So all she can claim now as a wife is that I won't commit adultery, which is a big deal, Christine. Can anybody explain, Tinkle Tinkles, how the Bible predicts the future? The only explanation is that it's being played out background usual conspiracy theory. Well, I haven't really read Revelations, but eschatology is about predicting the end, the end times. So, as an agnostic, there's not much point in my assuming the end of the world, because if I did, then I wouldn't be doing this, would I? I'd be praying every day and doing whatever religious people do, which is nothing practical. I'm a practical person. I'm a political activist. I'm a moral and political philosopher and a social and political scientist. So I deduce the future. I don't predict it. I deduce that once degenerate, white, anti-Semitic and Islamophobic Westerners try all the wrong ways first before they finally accept that there is no alternative. Well, think of all the damage done and the degeneracy suffered and the time lost. But these people don't care. People like Daniel, they don't have a sense of urgency because they don't have any biological investment in the next generation. Their immediate pleasures would be having a pity party. These are what they live for. Pity parties that never engage in any unpleasant truths. And if you keep wanting to come to the pity party, don't piss Daniel off by talking about things that he doesn't want to talk about or ask questions that he has no answer to. You won't be invited to his pity party anymore. I'm not. So John Williams is another Christian who doesn't think coherently. He occasionally makes sense, he's educated, but it doesn't matter whether God made two types of people, Jew and Gentile. This is a narrative that nobody sees fit to deny. I see that white Muslim woman is here. I'm just going to go quickly down the chat and deal with all the points before inviting her on, because otherwise I'll just forget to deal with it. Christine, I don't. If I wanted to be accepted by Daniel, I would just be agreeing with him that the way everybody is. Daniel knows exactly what I think of him. That's why he won't have me on, and because he knows he's lost all the arguments, and that's why he won't talk to me anymore. Okay. I'll have one. Carol on. Hello, Carol.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. How y'all doing?
I'm doing well. I've just watched something to rile me up. But that's how it is. Did you catch any of Daniel's stream?
Uh, no, I caught 2 seconds of it and I had to do something. I didn't know. I didn't get the notice in time or anything. Yeah, I no, I missed it. So I really don't know what they were speaking about or anything.
No, I hope I managed to tweet descriptively about them enough for you to get a gist of of that. But never mind. How have you been, and what have you been up to?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just doing. I told you before. I have all kinds of stuff that's going on at the
Mhm,
same time. So, but I'm doing all right. Getting it done slowly.
mhm.
hmm So what are you
And
all talking about?
well, I've just been complaining really about, entrenched attitudes, refusal to ask obvious questions because, I think we occasionally get like that. It's like, I don't want to know, so I'm not going to ask. Or if I'm being told, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear or I don't understand. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've ever encountered that, people pretending not to understand, to deliberately misunderstand you, so they can dismiss you because you're the messenger bearing bad news.
Oh, you're talking about your secular Quran is idea and
Well, I was talking generally, about how people behave when they when they want to remain in denial. But yes, I mean, I suppose everything goes back to secular Quranism. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm talking about attitudes really and tactical responses.
Yes, I think a lot of, I'm really not sure exactly what you're talking about right now, but I think people have been swayed so much by media that they can't even think a new thought. And they don't realize that how much, even if they think they're thinking something that sounds pretty positive and workable, that it's actually a defeatist attitude to begin with. And it's interesting to see that how pervasive this has become. That nobody can listen to an idea for a minute and think, is there any possibility in that at all? And if people would do that, they would see that there is possibility in some ideas, and that some are just a rehashing of a defeatist attitude that's been repackaged.
Can you give an example of this attitude or this idea that you?
Oh, okay. For example, well, I mean, I'm sure you know some of my thoughts on this. I'm a white woman, and there's a lot of talk on the internet and stuff about white people rebuilding their culture and this kind of stuff. But the suggestions they are giving, I don't see it going anywhere. It's not an academic discussion. It's about building a better white man. Can they do that? Not talking about it. You have to give them concrete things that people can do. And one of them is to get rid of this idea that you're at conflict with everybody else and focus on building. And it's not, let's have a little group that can discuss the problem.
I'm so glad you mentioned masculinity because that was one of the topics discussed by Daniel on the stream, and Daniel seemed to think that masculinity is behaving like one of those N people that he's always complaining about. I don't want to use the N word, but he's saying he's implicitly acknowledging that certain black people exhibit a kind of masculinity that it is impossible for a white man like him to imitate. And I thought, that's not masculinity. Being macho is not masculinity because, okay. Maybe what we should be doing is to define masculinity. And I'm saying good masculinity. functional masculinity is being able to defend a principle. Because, let's just assume that, that there are males and they look like males because they have male sex organs, and that they have more strength than women, and they have, and they can be, they come in varying degrees of physical fitness, but the internal furniture of what a man ought to be. And I think actually women have control over this, because what use is a man if he is no use to women? And of course the men would say the same thing too about women. We don't care what women want to be. It's and the only reason we have to have something they want for them to even want to talk to us or engage with us, and the same thing for men too. And that's why we need to be mostly heterosexual for there to be any kind of partnership between men and women to do anything. And so the preferences of men, of the kind of woman they'd like to have, and also for women about the kind of man they want to have, is all important. I mean, I'm sure, if left to ourselves, we can say, well, I'd like as a woman not to, do anything for any man. I like to eat lots. I don't like to clean the house. I don't want to be polite to men. That's how I like to be, for example. And of course, that would be a very unattractive thing for men. And a lot of men thinking, will say, well, I like to play video games. I don't like to shower. That you know what I mean. And therefore, the definition of masculinity must be the ability to defend something. And of course, we can think, oh, men are supposed to defend their territory, because they're the only people fit to do any fighting in a group if another group attacks them. So they have the job of soldiering and hard labor, and then it immediately becomes possible, obvious that the women have to do the other stuff that men can't do while they're, hunting and gathering and, defending their territory or whatever. And the only way to keep this from carrying on is these distinctions between these two groups about what the hell they're supposed to do.
Well, it's more than what they're supposed to do. It's how they are thinking, and it's our men, or have men built themselves up to the point that women can even see there's no way they could possibly take the place of a man. Wimptified men are not inspiring. Now, people want to look at the cosmetics of it. Oh, this woman's not subservient enough, not kind enough. Yeah, a lot of men would like that. I wish I was more like that. But is it worth it for women to do it for men who cannot be men? And some of these ideas that are being promoted are cosmetic. And I see that with when I'm looking at some of these Muslim speeches that they have on the internet. They have a lot of talk about, some of these duat guys, these sort of, I don't know, YouTube Muslim evangelators or whatever. They're coming off as caricatures of what they think a man's supposed to behave like. That is not what a real man acts like. That's not what they're like. Real men were people like my father. They faced life. They dealt with life. They were useful. And one time, when speaking about somebody getting a divorce, my father said, well, he's just a damn coward. My father's opinion was a man that left a marriage was a coward. Not somebody who wants to go be happy. And, you must fight for your family.
And then face up to your responsibilities as an adult male who is a husband and a father, which are patriarchal moral values, which men are no longer even aware of, let alone are capable of defending.
They're incapable of defending it because they are not making themselves excellent men.
Because they're not married fathers, because so many of them are unmarriageable.
No, they have wimped out. They're all looking for the easy way out. All of them. Everybody. The Muslims, the white people. I'm very distressed at what I see has happened to white culture. I'm horrified.
So am I. So am I. And I'm
Yes,
sure
yes,
everybody
but
around
they're
us, it's like,
not. They've
what
been
happened to
being
you guys?
brainwashed. They've been kept down. White men have been kept down, but they need to quit thinking about how they've been kept down and refuse to be kept down. And they have to start looking at how to build themselves into a better man. Now, your idea, this Quranic, I mean, I'm sorry, I keep reversing it for some reason, secular Quranism. Okay, people want to keep talking about, who cut whose finger off or something. But if you're looking at the general rules, if a man works and he comes home, can he still be man enough to sit in that living room without having a couple of beers and dealing with what's going on around him? Can he? Can he? It's such a breakdown of culture that it's very difficult to build it up, and they cannot do it on a superficial level. They have to start thinking like all these guys, these white guys, instead of going into trades, they're trying to find jobs they don't work. I don't know when the last time a white plumber has come over to the house. Okay, it's all been taken over by Mexicans, and not I'm not saying bad Mexicans or something here. I'm just saying, what are the white guys that do this stuff for a living? Why is it that when we needed shipbuilders on the East Coast, they had to import a whole bunch of welders from Ireland?
Well,
You see what I'm
because
saying?
the welfare state is one of the sacred cows that everyone's scared of saying, well, maybe that was a bad idea,
But they're
the
talking
welfare
about,
state, because it is a sacred cow. Everybody's bought into it because they've
okay,
all
everybody's
benefited from
bought
it.
into it, but the way to get out of it is to produce a better human. It's not talking about we need to get one of those welfare state in itself. I mean, we need to discuss that too. But it's
Mm.
not just that. It's can you produce men who actually think they can survive without a welfare state? Because I'm seeing a younger generation, they're making plans around handouts that were 30-year-old men are having vasectomies so they won't have children. They have given up. They've given up.
Yes.
They don't even say it. So how do you do this? How do you make it happen? And one way to do this is look at some of the Black people that have come to this country and actually had a message that did help their people. Okay, like Booker T. Washington, who wrote that book From Slavery. It's a simple book to read. I would think anybody in junior high or high school could even read it.
Could you
And
say the name of the book again? Sorry,
it's
I'm
called
familiar
Up
with
From Slavery. And Booker T. Washington wrote it. He started a school for Black people that, to study for school.
it.
First thing they taught in it was how to make a bed. Okay,
Hmm.
how do you make a bed? Because a lot of them have been on plantations and stuff, and they weren't, the house Negroes. They weren't house Negroes. So
Oh,
he
so
showed
they
that.
needed to do stuff like, DIY.
Okay, but listen. White, if you read the book, it's obvious that white people are doing the same thing that these slaves did when they got free, which wasn't helping themselves the right way. He made the point that you had to learn how to make a living. His son was taught, I think, bricklaying. He taught his son bricklaying. Then he said, then go learn Greek. We now have all these white men, white people, who are skillless. They can't do anything. All they can do is go hire someone to do something for them. It's pathetic. It's really pathetic. And
Because
so,
they're not taught things like woodwork anymore in their schools.
tell
I
me
mean, it
about
used to be,
changing a tire. They go get a flat tire. They call up their mommy. Mommy, I got a flat tire. What should I do? Well, dear, your AAA card's in your wallet. You can take that out. AAA. This is ridiculous. And I have seen people behaving like this. Do you see what I'm saying?
is it
So
because these men
how do
grew
you
up
get
in
white?
fatherless homes? Is it because of that, you think?
No, these people have fathers in their homes. Their fathers have good jobs. I mean, a man can't do everything. Men go to work. I mean, some of these people have engineers for fathers and stuff. They're useless. The guys are useless. So now you've got guys who are useless, and it's not it's just not sexually appealing to women. Okay, this kind of
Mm.
thing's not sexually appealing. So if you can't have men who really truly are sexually appealing and who are exuding a manliness that is not centered on some kind of act they're putting on, like acting like they're men, like this caricatures. Basically everyone's dealing with
Romeos, I
caricatures, like
guess.
my avatar. It's a character right now. If you're looking at that, that's a character. What
Hmm.
is the substance behind it? What is the substance of a man behind that? So how do you teach that if your generation dropped the ball? Okay. So if they looked at the rules of Islam, they could build off of that, because Islam says get a job, but it says more than that. It tells people to excel. Now, how do you excel? What if I had a child today? Let's say I had a boy, let's say I was young enough to have anyone that was possibly thinking of going to college. If they
Hmm.
were going to go to college, I would tell them go whatever they're going to major in. We're not even talking about suitable majors right now. I would
Hmm.
tell them to go to a campus that has ROTC units at it. I would tell them go to basic camp, which counts as 2 years of that. But also they would learn something. They'd learn how to put a rifle together and tear it apart. They'd learn how to string up a Claymore mine and, shoot some laws and do all this stuff. It's confidence building for a man, but it's also useful. I mean, you don't know if it's possible. It could look at the Ukrainians. How much better would they all be if they all knew how to shoot some weapons and do this stuff? They need to learn this stuff that is not centered around some kind of idea that we're going to fight a huge race war later. It has to be centered on the idea I'm building myself into a man. I'm going to be a man, a real man. And real men don't get their, what do you call it, their self esteem from suppressing women. Do you understand? A real man can listen to a woman yell at him, but he's going to be the man. There's a
Hmm.
big difference. There's a huge difference in the behaviors and these things. So if white people looked at secular Quranism, just the basic rules in Islam, we're not going to drink and take drugs anymore. Well, wouldn't that be a vast improvement? How many times have you seen families ruined because the guy wimped out and decided to start smoking meth?
Hmm.
Or the woman decides, the guy just isn't doing it for her sexually, so now she's going to have an affair, and let's have it with the drug dealer.
Hmm.
This is all over the place. I'm not saying everybody's doing this, but it's at the point now that this is destroying the nation. It's destroying families. It's destroying everything. So I think it's a much more complex problem than what people are presenting, but they're wimping out. Okay, you want to talk about maybe white people should get together and talk about things. How about telling their boys, go get a job? Don't call your mommy if you have to walk somewhere. What is wrong with this? That we have a generation of boys who are acting like couch potato girls, right? I mean, of course, dressing up in drag becomes attractive to them. Then they could be something dressed up in drag. Oh,
Hmm.
I could be attractive to somebody if I'm dressed up in drag. You understand? I'm not saying everybody who dresses up in drag is doing it for that reason, but I'm sure some of them are.
Or it's a way of getting attention, or they think that women can get sex easily more cheaply than men, and they think, well, if I become a woman, I'll get sex more cheaply, and I don't have to buy the drinks or make the
Do
first
you really,
move.
do you really think they go that far in their
I
thinking?
don't know, but
I
but I
don't
mean,
think there's enough self introspection for anyone to go beyond band aid solution. But
well, I mean,
I
yeah.
think men can be encouraged to be men again, and I think even men who are not very manly can encourage it by encouraging these things. Now, it used to be like the sports game was part of it, camaraderie with men, this kind of thing. But they need a lot more than just going to joining a soccer team. What's going on now?
But what I was trying to extract from what Daniel said in his stream about masculinity is that I think fundamentally he thinks um, the men, the man, the kind of man to want to be is the kind of man who gets a lot of sex, and and I'm also saying, well, if most women are so cheap and give themselves randomly to all kinds of men, then there is no particular what should I say distinction in being able to get women who give of themselves freely, cheap women, you know because maybe if you have a big sex organ, that's enough to do it for that, for those females, and and,
Well,
and nothing about your prospects.
no, that's not what's going on. That's the thinking of maybe some girl in junior high. Right? That's the thinking of someone who's real young, like oh, I like the bad boy image, James Dean, this kind of thing. That's the thinking of very young women. It's not the thinking of adult women. Adult women are being stuck having to take on a lot of male characteristics because the men around them don't want to be men, number one, and because of this, they no longer can just they can't quite fit in with being a woman, the idea of a woman anymore. You would have to say, I mean, logically, a woman would be stupid to get married if she doesn't have some way to make a living because the marriages aren't working out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
going to ruin your career for a man who's calling his mother if he gets a flat tire? I mean, nobody, much as Oedipus and that movie is great, most women don't want to sleep with their sons. Now, if the guy's going to act like that, they're not instilling a good thing. Okay, I want to be able to have a meltdown and call up a man and say, I got a flat tire and I just can't deal with this. Oh, great. Can he show up? Or is he going to tell me to get my AA card out? I mean, AAA card, right? Now, obviously, most would call the AAA card, but it's not a good, this is not a good situation. Okay, now nobody wants a wife maybe that's acting like a big wimp, but a man could deal with a woman who's being a wimp if she's not arguing with him all day long, right? A man still thinks a woman is a woman if she's wimpy. But who thinks a man is a man if he's that wimpy? Understand? But you can't change this around by pretending to be a man. You can't change this around by advocating becoming a cartoon or talking about why are black men so successful with women, white women. Well, a lot of black men will talk and try to romantically schmooze somebody, and I guess people think it's better than nothing. Okay.
With a masculine display, but that's not going to improve gender relations. We know gender relations are improved if more people marry and stay married for the sake of and stay married. I think that would be a proof of improved gender relations. But I think the fundamentals of masculinity would be, like, I have principles and I'm going to say what I believe to be the truth, and I'm not going to be, submitting to, whatever lie or stupid argument that is being pressed on them. But what I've noticed, certainly in politics, is that, politicians apologize for telling the truth, when they inadvertently blurt it out. And if you stick to your principles, you're going to get called for a fanatic. It's only a matter of time. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. And they all submit. They'll say, well, I better change my mind then, even though, nobody's actually won the argument. They've just, only complained about having their feelings hurt or calling you racist, sexist, whatever. That they're going to, that's the nature of a political discourse. I win if I call you that name first. Because
okay. Well, how about having political discourse that isn't being run and controlled by people who either want to control you or wimps. How about that? How about we build up the men, become men again, and they need to do it themselves, not have their mummies do it for them. And they are the ones who are in political discourse. What happens then? See,
But
it's a multifaceted system. It goes in a circle. So okay, so why would a man get married? He's already wimpified to the point that he's thinking, what's my advantage to it? He's already wimped out when he's the type of guy who says, I'm not going to get married ever. I'm not going to do it. He gave up. He left the battlefield, in other words. He's a coward.
Yeah.
This is cowardice. And they don't want to admit they're cowards. No coward wants to.
Yeah, but
Okay.
with white nationalists, this is the thing. I think I've made a reasonable job of explaining that. If you won't get a government that governs in the national interest if you don't have enough good, strong men capable of defending patriarchal moral values. And what does patriarchal moral values mean? It really means defending the practice of marriage and family values, which none of them are interested in. And so, that is the sticking point. They can't actually get their act together to say, well, feminism is wrong. Because the moment they say feminism is wrong, the sexual access is going to be withheld from them, and they can't bear it. Particularly the men who have anything to lose. So that's why they won't go there. And the low status men would be saying, well, I don't want to marry anyone. I can't afford to marry. Nobody wants to marry me. But this is the thing. And so the high status men who are married to all these feminist wives who can divorce them using the rules of no fault divorce, well, they don't want to acknowledge that they're in a way trapped, because their daughters might block them on Facebook if they post anything politically incorrect. I know men who've complained about that to me. They can't even post anything without their children thinking they're thought criminals, particularly their daughters. So there's a lot of unacknowledged neurosis amongst men in senior positions of political power.
Well, the issue is can we as society turn this around and produce men who are worthy of political power?
Yes,
Now,
you can, but only if you acknowledge what the problem is, and that they're not doing it. They're just sort of complaining vaguely about feminism without ever proposing a solution. And when I say, here's my solution, they don't want to know, because they do realize that is what it would take to flip the situation, and they're not up for it because they're old men, the ones who know what I'm talking about, and the young men don't see anything worth defending.
Well, it's not that they don't see anything worth defending. They can't figure out how to even do that. And they can't even figure out why they would want it. Because they're being lazy. This is laziness. It's a huge extension of laziness as part of it. It's so multifaceted that there isn't one answer. So maybe your idea is right. Yeah, it is right. They need to get married and have children. But how can they do that if they're not man enough to call AAA on their own?
The government needs
so
to.
Then who do these women marry? Who do they marry? Some of these.
Well, I guess they keep voting for pro-immigration parties.
Listen to what I'm saying. So they're going to marry what? These brown guys that come into the country who don't think like that at all. They're not defeatist at all. There's two groups of brown men coming into this country. Ones that are sort of came from a little bit of a money background and stuff. They're just as bad. But then there's a group of brown men that come into this country because they couldn't make a living where they were at. They were not tied up financially with their families other than sending money home. And they make manly decisions. They decided to move out of their cultural element to try to forge a future for themselves and to have a family. Having a family is on their mind. Having a wife and family. Now, this kind of thinking, do white men want the white women? Do white men, why don't they be the white men they used to be? And it takes work. It takes real work. And if they start now every day doing something to improve themselves, they will become better men. And the is rules in Islam, the surface ones, don't drink, don't take drugs, study something. You're encouraged to study. You take care of your wife. The thinking has to be they're going to take care of their wife, not these plans they have in their head of, well, my wife can contribute in this way financially. I'm not saying there's something wrong if a woman contributes financially to her family, but there's something wrong with the man's thinking if that's the first plan he can come up with, and that he's deciding to pick a lifestyle where it's incumbent that his wife contributes in this way. It's a radical difference in thinking, and their thinking is being destroyed.
Yes,
So
and the marriage is not supported by the law in the West because they have no fault divorce. So it means that, if you don't like your marriage, you can walk away and no fault is implied. And this is something that even anti-feminist political activists who are male refuse to challenge because they don't want to get married. And all the men who might have a complaint about feminism, they don't want to get married either. And they won't acknowledge this and they won't engage on the subject. But the great thing about Islam is that they have this thing called a Muslim marriage contract. And there are terms implied into a marriage contract about whether the wife is expected to go out to work or whatever, and these things would concentrate the mind, but because their rejectionism of Islam and even the idea of having religion is so complete, they will never actually get to that point when they think, well, what's a new deal? What kind of bargain can I strike that will save my race or nation? Or they're not even thinking like that, though. They're not even thinking of how the law is going to change. Or if you point it out to them, they're saying, well, we don't want it. We prefer things as they are, with the possibility of, cheap sex, because they can't think beyond, their next sexual encounter.
they're afraid of women. What
Yes.
woman wants to marry a man who's afraid of them? Actually afraid of them. Look, think about what you're saying. A man has some assets maybe, and he doesn't want to marry his wife. He doesn't want to get married because then the woman will get his assets. And boy, that's a real problem going on now. I see a lot of that. Okay, so he doesn't want her to get the assets. So he's been through one marriage already, let's say, and it went to hell, and the kids were there. Okay, now he's going to whip out the marriage contract. Okay, he understands it from that standpoint, right? Does he want exclusivity with a woman or not with a particular woman, and why? They don't. Nobody knows what they're doing. I see a whole generation of people who don't know what they're doing. Not just
Yes,
one
but
generation.
the problem, but the problem, Carol, is that these men who complain about feminism, who are political activists campaigning against feminism, refuse to and refuse to campaign against no fault divorce because they sense that other men aren't interested in marriage. So
Because
then,
they know they're wimps. Okay, they know they're so wimpy men are so prevalent. What a lot of people don't understand is that's the wimpy men who abuse women. It's the wimpy guys. If you have a male, a male, I don't know what you want to call it, a gender. Let's say if you have a gender that has become this wimpy as men, they know their daughters need to get away from the men. You see what's happening?
but what if
Everybody
most men
talks about
are
the
like
abusive
that?
male. The abusive male is not the man who's a true man. It's the wimps. They're smacking women around because they're not men. They have to be built up into men again.
But they need
Nobody
to be
looks at this.
shown
So yeah, okay, I'm going to
role
tell
models and all
my
that.
daughter, okay, I'm going to advocate no fault divorce so that you can marry this wimp and never get out of it. Now, I mean, it's people don't want to go back to that. So, but marriage, yes, marriage, women need to quit cheapening themselves. They don't need to go get drunk in a bar, and then this is women being stupid. They're just being stupid. And then the men, okay, oh, great. The man goes out to have fun. You see, men, they're not even getting married. Some of them are waiting until they're almost 50 to get married because they finally realize they can't even get the dates anymore. Right? That no woman's going to really like them unless it's for money. You know what I'm saying? Like even that, in that case, when it starts getting up like that, well, yeah, you're not going to get a trophy wife who really likes you. You don't really think that, do you? So, but it's the basic, how to solve it is to have men in society, men, and it's not having children of people that they're not married to, where they have even less rights than if they were married. Marriage in the United States is controlled by the states. Each state has different marriage laws. Some of them.
So how would they be different in whatever state?
Well, for example, in California, it's a community property state. All the debts and assets after marriage are shared between the husband and wife. So a housewife is going to put up with that. Let's say she has a financially irresponsible husband. Is she supposed to stay home with the kids and do that more traditional stuff, or does she have to start looking out for herself? You understand? That's a problem. If you get a divorce in Oregon, for example, they have this equitable thing. So in other words, a woman can pay a bunch of alimony to the husband, which they can do in California too, or pay. In other words, they're going to divide the assets of like, well, the woman can pay this much a percent of the assets and the man this much. So if you have some husband who was unemployed a lot, you're stuck paying for him, right?
Right. So
the laws are bad. So now we are entering into the realm of prenuptial agreements, which is essentially what the Islamic marriage contract is. It's a prenuptial agreement. The real nuptial is when everybody signs it. And do you understand? It's a prenuptial agreement. So the basic marriage contract is pretty bleak. I would not get married under a basic Islamic marriage contract. I have some conditions in mind. I put some real conditions in there that I wanted. I did not put in some weird condition that my husband had to pay for them all. You understand what I'm saying? People have to be realistic and stuff. But I mean, that might be a good idea. People might go for something like that. I don't know. But right now, they're not going for marriage at all. And they're just throwing their genetic, what do you call it? They're throwing their genetic heritage everywhere because they want to go have fun. And they're delaying marriage. So you have a situation where people should be getting married younger, but they're not fit to be married. Their thinking is not like an adult. 18-year-olds used to get married. I've met people who got married at 18 and they married up till the day they all died. That was actually relatively common. Not super, and it all started falling apart. But I've met people and they weren't Muslim. They were not Muslim. It's because they were adults. So you have this extended childhood that's going now up to what, 35 or 40 years old. People are acting like little kids. They can't look at themselves. They have no introspection. They're not looking at, is this really going to work out? So some of these white nationals are mad the women are marrying the brown guys. These brown guys will actually get married and put themselves through school the same time they're married. They will do it themselves. This is a behavior of someone acting like a man. Now, if you get all mad at one of these brown guys, let's say you're married to one of these brown guys. I'm not saying these are all a bunch of nice guys. I mean, there's good and bad and all that. But if you're married to someone like that, who did all that for you, and let's say you got sick, and they're actually stayed with you when you were sick, you're going to think Even if you get mad and threaten a divorce, you're going to reevaluate that if you have any brains, because you're not going to get a replacement who's going to do all that for you.
Mm.
But what's the white guy doing? Oh, I don't know what to do, Mama. My car got a flat tire. I
Yeah.
was horrified at some. You know, I met some of these people I met, so I was like, why would anybody want to go out with him? I don't care if he does look like George Clooney. You know what I mean? It's like nothing.
It's kind of emotional torture being stuck with a man you don't respect, whom
Well,
you
if he
think
has
is
to be a man,
stupider and more frightened than you are. I think it's emotional torture for a woman.
but advocating taking on caricatures of hip hop culture isn't going to solve this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're
Yeah.
looking at men that are making cartoon characters out of themselves, you know, or it's just it's really repulsive, and it's not you know, it's not a turn on. Being around that, it's not a happy life. It's not anything. Now you can be a real man. Let's say you're a man and you're a woman and you want some kind of a career and stuff, right? And most women end up miserable that pick these real time consuming careers. They're not even getting good advice on what type of a career to pick if they get one, if they want to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you're buying the pizzas 3 times a week, you're doing all this stuff, and they're having affairs with people at work because that's who they're around. They're not even around their families. You know, the workplace affair is very common.
You know, I think uh, the problem can be easily solved, but
No, it
you know,
can't.
this is so much in theory anyway. In theory, which is the uh, co-education, you know, will destroy well, femininity as well as masculinity. But if you had single-sex secondary schools, then you know people would be more like, you know, the men would be more likely to be men and the women more likely to be women, and it would prevent
Well,
a lot of unwanted teen pregnancy,
well,
wouldn't it? But
well.
you know, for Americans to even contemplate the end of American high school culture would be, well, sacrilegious, I imagine. What about the high school prom? This is what we live for, being prom king and prom queen.
Okay, well, let's look at it this way. Let's look at it from a different version. Okay, you got a society that the media is pretty much telling everyone, go have sex, don't get married. That's what the media is telling everybody. Don't get married, have sex, right? The kids, the young people are watching these shows and they believe that, and they're going to school and they're dressing up like the people they see in the show. So the media has done quite a lot to make people think that freedom means sex with whoever you want. It's your right. Now you got a school that's going to help them decide if they want to go on female contraception or if they want to get condoms to deal with their sexual behavior, and are you having a good time. I mean, this is really what's going on. Okay,
Mm.
so if you have separate schools, okay, this is my argument about. I'll give you an example. If I hope I'm not talking too much. Maybe White Way wants to talk. I don't know, but
I'm fascinated.
I say okay. Now I got. It used to be that you just didn't have a good foundation of teachers that weren't men, because it used to be in the United States anyway. You picked a career. You either got married or you were a teacher. You couldn't be both. You couldn't go to work pregnant. This conversation couldn't come up at all. If a girl got
Mm.
pregnant, she was ripped out of school right away. Nobody was to see the pregnant kid, right?
Yeah, because it's a
So
bad influence.
yes, of course. But people don't understand it that way anymore. They're not looking at the reality thing. So, well, anyway, what was I trying to say about this? Senior moment here. What was I saying, Claire, about the
You were
school?
talking about
Oh, okay.
school
So,
segregation, maybe.
right, they decided to go to middle school here. You know, schools, the schools used to, mostly schools used to be, yeah, maybe you had the kindergartners separate in a little building or something, but it was kindergarten up through 6th grade. Junior high was 7th and 8th grade, And then high school was 9, 10, 11, 12. And so now that a lot of schools have gone to the middle school model, which is elementary school up through 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th together. And then sometimes grade 9's in there, and sometimes it's not. And then you have the high school all 4 years together. All right. So now you got a problem, a societal problem. I took, I mean, it involved a lot of reading these different things. Okay. The statistics at the time, back when this was all going on, when the school district that my children was in, that was talking about moving to this middle school model, was that the vast majority of unwanted pregnancies in the United States was among 6th grade girls.
What age is that? What age is?
6th graders?
Yes.
Well, you're about 10. You're about 10 in 5th grade. You're talking, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 and 12-year-olds. Okay. 11 and 12-year-olds.
Wow.
Okay, now, so the school district's big idea is let's go to a middle school. So now the 11 and 12-year-old girls can be around 8th grade boys. And who do boys? I mean, in the dating scene, in schools and stuff, the older guys try to date the younger girls. They feel more confident with them, right? They're more confident. The older girls in high school. Oh, she got a college guy. She's dating some guy who's at the junior college, right? So they're gonna throw them in now with a bunch of little guys that are looking for sex. They've all been conditioned to look for sex that maybe they might not have even been thinking about if they hadn't been watching all this media and everybody talking about it all the time, because it's gone way beyond the old car commercial where it had some, bimbo looking person sitting on the hood of the car saying, "Come buy my Chevrolet," right? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So that's their answer to it. Well, if you put them in segregated schools now, because we do have a wide wealth of educated women, okay, they're certainly educated enough to teach a class. So if you separated the girls, okay, so now you've got a 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade girl. Well, if they aren't flirting with the boys at school, then who would they go flirt with? Maybe some guy down the street or some guy in the movie theater. But they're not doing it at school. They're not getting hooked up with guys at school. They're not making out with some guy behind a building at school. They're not doing that stuff. So the shyer girls, at least the ones that are more shy, have a chance. They have a chance to get through school without being some guy's sex toy.
Yeah.
You understand? So yeah, they should separate these things. Now the other side of
that will have to happen after the Islamic Revolution of America.
Well, the Muslims have to change their attitude. They have to change their thinking too. They have become so law oriented that they're just looking at the wrong things. They're just looking at the wrong things when they're solving their problems in this country too. I mean,
so why do American Muslims have to give them permission to support secular Quranism? And I think, men are kind of looking for permission from women to say, I mean, imagine if the women wised up and said, well, we're going to be, we're going to become Muslim, we're going to go to mosque, and if you want to find us, you'll have to come and become Muslim too, and that's the only way you can get a woman who will be a good wife and mother to your children, or stand a better chance. Women can take the moral lead.
Immigrant Muslims don't want that. Okay, this is just you're not gonna go find them at the mosque. You know how hard it is for a white man to get married at a masjid? It's virtually
Why would it be hard? I thought, you join a mosque. It doesn't matter whether you're white or whatever color. The people will know that there are, these single Muslims, and they'll try to match them up. And I guess if they
They
like
will
each other, it would
not.
happen.
That is
Mm.
not the reality of what has happened. They have not tried to match them up.
But wouldn't they get to know of each other?
They
People would say,
make
"Oh,
sure
so and
they
so is
don't
single."
know each other. They make sure they don't know each other. For the immigrant Muslim community at large, they are very accepting of Black Americans who are Muslim. They get the Assalamu alaikum, brother, right? Just don't ask for my kid to get married to. That's the attitude. Okay. You listening
Hmm.
here? The
Yeah.
white guy, it's like, oh God, that guy's a joke. Then it's, oh my God, somehow my daughter wants to marry him and they want to marry each other. And we're in a society, they just might go do it without our permission. All of a sudden, they Islam the guy up. That's not every single situation. But they didn't want them marrying a white guy. But they do think that, okay, if they marry the white guy, at least the kid will look more like us than if they marry the black one.
Okay.
It's really primitive thinking. But it's simple thinking, and it's easy to understand once you understand that.
Right.
Once somebody
Right.
understands that's the thinking. They don't think white people have the capacity to be Muslim. Their view of white people is they have no honor. They have no family honor. They talk about their families in public. They're so weird. They have massive divorces, and they have all these kids with people that they weren't married to. Well, so do the black people, but they think their thinking is, okay, nobody's going to want to marry the black people, and then they get shocked when they do. Do you understand?
Mm.
They don't
Wow.
understand society. They don't understand anything here. And do you think they've ever once asked American Muslims what's going on? No. I saw an entire masjid get destroyed. They all got together, the new immigrants came, all this. They bought a huge warehouse. And they lost the warehouse because they got in trouble when all the neighbors realized there was a bunch of Muslims going in there. They were horrified
Mhm.
because there was a
Mm.
funeral that fell on a weekday. So people were at that mosque. They used to just only go on the weekends. So nobody
Mhm.
ever realized what was going on in this building. So they complained. They went in front of the judge. The judge said, no. And then it was like, well, let me think about it. And by the way,
What was the legal action about? Can you explain?
misuse of an industrial building and using up too many parking spaces.
Okay.
Okay, so the judge said, okay, this building's not approved for this kind of activity anyway. And somehow he got talked into considering it, which probably meant he was going to go against them anyway, right? But he said, well, I'll think about it. And if there's any more complaints, think about, but you guys have to cease and desist using this building because, by the way, one toilet's not enough for 2,000 people. I mean, they got you on the toilet problem, right? So what do you think these people did? You have some white Muslims that used to go to that mosque, some American black Muslims that used to go, who are all treated like converts when a lot of them aren't even converts, which is a joke too, because many black Muslims are multi-generational Muslim. And everyone keeps calling them convert. And there are some white people that are multi-generational Muslims too. It wasn't like it wasn't like me, I'm converted, but there are people like me whose parents had converted, right? And they were brought up as some type of Muslim. So, okay, so all this goes on. What do you think those people decided to do? Do you think they turned their head and say, "Oh yeah, there's one of those there's one of those black Americans. Maybe they would know what to do in the situation, or maybe that white woman has some idea." Do you think they walked over and said, "Hey, this judge is saying we're not supposed to be using this building"? They could have done it when they were using the building after they were told not to use it. Well, what do you think is going to happen if the judge finds out we're still using it? What do you think is going to happen? Right? What do you think the answer from the white Muslim would be, or the black American?
Better not.
You better not do it, you idiot. You're going to lose the building. So what do you think they did? So instead of even just doing it on the weekends where they might could have gotten away with it, they had another funeral on a weekday. That was the end of the masjid. They blew it. They went against a judge's ruling. They lost it. They ended up with a huge elephant of a financial problem with this warehouse. It's like, okay, this after 40 years, and they still haven't realized maybe we should ask somebody, because in their countries, everybody goes, drags things out in court and tries to get away with something without doing it. They come from cultures, a lot of which is like, how can you get around the law and not do it? Not follow it? How can you? But they just thought, okay, no problem. We're just going to do this. Yeah, they ruined it. They ruined it for themselves. They ruined it for not even bothering to ask the people who are sitting there. I mean, it wasn't even like they had to go out of their way. There were some white Muslims that used to go every week, and some American black Muslims that used to go.
Yeah, you would have thought they rely on the local knowledge of a few friendly locals.
No, because they know it all. Because all they're concerned about is preserving the culture of their families, because they're just kind of really horrified by the openness and stuff that goes on in American culture, right? But you can function as a conservative in American culture if you're conservative. And if you get enough conservative people, I'm talking about conservative on the political scale now. If you have enough conservative people, they could possibly take over politics if you're not looking into how in the heck are these people getting selected anyway to run? I mean, we have so many problems going on in the United States right now that you can't solve it all with one thing. But any white Muslim who becomes Muslim, any white person who becomes Muslim, they're not going to learn Islam in a way that's culturally good for them if they go to these masjids. And I'm not saying it like there's something wrong with these people, but it's not the American ideal of individual. It's just not the same. And you can't, it's either they're telling people to be way too passive, or they're telling them to be a social justice warrior. But what they're both doing is trying to keep people out of white society, if you think about it. And why? What is the problem with white society? Well, white people created a great civilization. We had the Romans. I mean, we had the Romans and stuff. It's the only civilization in the world wasn't the Abbasids or any of these other ones. I mean, they were great too in their own way and stuff. But white civilization was quite profound, and it went on for a long time. And if you include the Roman and Byzantines as part of that, and if you want to include the Ottomans, which some people do because they were so white by the end of the way they ran, the sultans and stuff ran their different ideas. They ended up with a pretty white nation, a very, very white kind of nation. If they look at that, I mean, that's what's been that was what was winning for so long.
But it doesn't even have to be racial. It's sort of like, well, this civilization fell because they did this wrong thing, and that civilization fell because they did the other wrong thing. We're not going to be repeating their mistakes. You learn from the mistakes of others.
But they don't. But the immigrant Muslims aren't looking at the full wider picture in the right way, and what they're encouraging among their daughters and families is basically advice that's not going to help them to get along in this country. And I'm certainly not advocating a sellout advice at all. I don't believe in that. I wear hijab. I look like a Muslim. I put up with the flack everywhere I go. I mean, I look like what people think a Muslim looks like, in other words. And I did go through a stage where I was trying to hide it with some really bizarre looking outfits because I got really worn out for a little while. But I live in.
But you could still be Muslim and dress, in a way that people won't notice that you're Muslim and still be Muslim. I think. I mean, isn't that possible? Maybe this is what you should encourage your fellow Americans to do, because actually, I mean, I've spoken to this Canadian. Well, he was in the Canadian Nationalist Party, and then he converted to Islam, and he was actually a secular Quranist. He thought it was a great idea, but it was just too much for him to. Carol has dropped out, but I'll finish my story, which is that after he converted to Islam, which meant that, he would be regarded as, well, he would be rejected by his own Christian community for having gone over to Islam. He didn't want to be rejected by his new Muslim community, and that was why he basically forgot about his conversion. And I think maybe people don't need to go the whole hog. You go to mosque and they reject you and they're not nice, when actually you can still be, well, Muslim inside without having to deal with the crap of all these people treating you like a freak. Um, that was basically what I was saying, really, Carol. Maybe
Well,
you are taking on too much by just going full Muslim and looking like one.
well, it was a situation. Well, when I first became Muslim, it was actually it was pleasant in the beginning. Okay, because the end of the hippie thing, people were kind of used. I mean, we had people walking around the streets sometimes wearing pyramids on their head. I mean, it wasn't that much of a problem unless you're trying to look for a job. Okay, but it just went downhill. And I mean, that's like a totally different discussion, really. But okay, do you have to dress? But part of the problem. Okay, if you live in a cooler climate, you could put on like maybe a puffer coat. I mean, if your idea is you want to dress where you're covering up everything you're supposed to as a woman, and maybe some kind of a cute hat, and then you've got like a neck scarf that bunches everything up, and the puffer coat does that. It doesn't work when you live someplace that's hot as hell most of the year. You're just so hot. Can't stand it. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
there's different
I know.
issues, but you don't
Sorry.
have to. But a Muslim who doesn't wear a scarf, okay, a Muslim woman who doesn't wear a scarf, they're all around the place too. There's all kinds of Muslim women that don't wear scarves, including among the immigrants. I've seen many. One time I went to an iftar at a particular masjid, and women were putting their scarves on in the parking lot to go in. Okay, I mean, yeah, Muslims do that, and I don't. The big problem really is that white culture is in such a horrible decline, and if it wasn't, let's say white culture wasn't in a huge decline, would they really care that there's some brown people running around in scarves? Would they really care? No, because they'd be on top of the world again.
Yeah, they find, women in hijabs as a sort of horrible reminder of their own fallen status. I mean, that's why the French went crazy and and banned the burkini on their practically nudist beaches, because they don't want to be reminded of all these Muslims in their country, wanting to dress modestly.
Is it helping that you have a bunch of YouTube people ranting and raving, using, talking about white women like we're garbage? Is that helping? Is that helping the situation? Everybody's doing the wrong thing. Everybody's
Yeah.
doing the wrong thing. Now, do we want a race war? Hell no. Should people be living in this country if they're trying to tear it down instead of building it up? Hell no. So we're going to open up the borders, have these people basically come in and not build up anything. The Mexican community is trying to build something for themselves. Okay, with all the problems they have, they're trying to build something, and they're just, everybody's just doing the wrong thing.
So the
But
rules
the
need to be changed.
white people need to produce white men that have the same mindset people like my father had. Not
But it can't be replicated now, because most young men in the West don't have, access to people like your father.
Well, I don't think it's really true everywhere. I mean, I think like in some of these places that are a little bit more rural, I don't think that's really true. But I think it is true in the cities. I think there's been a horrible breakdown of white culture. The cities are sort of, yeah. And then, like in the Midwest, I think you can still get, a white guy who's pretty decent. Pretty
But
decent.
male role models is the important thing, and you won't get any male role models if most children born, come from fatherless homes, and their mother's not married. And if nobody will say that this is a problem, then it will continue to get worse,
Oh, it's
because this is
absolutely a
this is
problem.
this is a big sacred cow for Western man and woman. They have to reject 50 years of feminism and fornication, because that's how feminism works. It operates through bribing men with fornication to make feminism tolerable to men. Have some cheap sex. You don't have to marry her. It's cool. Just have more sex if you're getting a bit upset, and forget about your problems by, because that's how. I mean, that's why we now have more and more varieties of
Look,
extramarital sex that is, being recommended even by the
okay.
government.
I don't like using personal examples, but let me think here. Uh, it has to do with thinking more than anything else. You're thinking about life and what you think. I'm a man, and I want to get, like, the immigrants, for example. They're very involved with marriage. Now we have immigrants that wasn't just students that came over or something. It's whole families that came over, and they're all involved in the marriage process and stuff, right?
Yeah, because they keep being invited to weddings.
And they, well, not just, no, it's more than that. They're financially involved in all of it.
Mhm.
Okay, we're going to buy you this or that. It's sort of like how Italians used to be when they got married. We're going to help you out financially here. So, I mean, there's some of that going on. And I knew of one case where a man called off a wedding for his daughter because someone else could help him get a gas station. Okay, there's a little bit of that going on. A little bit. So, okay, what am I trying to say here? Blah, 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 blah. The
About
thinking is totally different. I'm a man. It used to be, okay, I'm a guy and I'm working somewhere. Oh, damn it, I lost my job. Mommy, I lost my job. Help me, mommy. Right? That's what's going on now. Mommy, mommy, I don't know what to do. I lost my job. Okay, honey, I'll send you some money. Right? It used to be white people. I'm talking about middle class people. Even Rockefeller, for example. You call it, mommy, I need some money. Well, I don't have any money. Your father works, and he's not going to give you any money. Get a job. Figure it out. Right? So how do you figure it out? Well, okay, I'm going to go live in my car. I'm going to live in my car somewhere. Okay, it's not a bad decision, is it? It's not asking somebody else to give you a handout. It was a good decision. Live in your car. Okay, right? Go live in your car. Go join a health club where you can take showers and try to get another job. Right? Right? That's how everybody used to think that was white. They were not thinking. And I have heard people do this. I swear, I've heard people white people tell their kids, well, honey, you're almost 18 now. I think we can get you on a list for low income housing. Well, isn't that a great way to teach your kid to be a slave? Isn't that great? Isn't that fabulous? Wow, how about get a job and buy a nice vehicle in case you end up jobless? Go sleep in the back of your car somewhere if you can. Now they're fixing it. The laws are being passed. You can't even do that.
You
Right?
can't even what? You can't even do what? You can't even
Sleep in
tell
a
your kid.
car. You can't even sleep in a car. They'll impound your car and take it away from you.
Oh.
Right. So you can't even do that. But I mean, sure, we don't want a bunch of cars parked here. But what do we got now? A bunch of people in tents. Got a bunch of crack people in tents. I mean, the laws are against you. Everything is
I
against you.
think
But
you
you're a
have to
man.
reintroduce slavery, so people know, like, that it's worse than being unemployed, and then you become a
How?
slave, and you become a slave
Right.
that nobody wants to hire or buy,
No,
so
you're
these
you're creating
gradations.
a
So
yeah, you're creating a slave to a system and to a state. We don't want that. You don't want that. My dad, way back when let's see, way back when my dad was a military man. When he got out of the military and he went back to his hometown. This was I think it was right after the Korean War. He went back to his hometown,
Mhm.
and my dad was extremely good looking, which
Mhm.
flew over my head because he was my dad. But when I looked at
Mhm.
some pictures, after he's dead and everything, I thought, oh yeah, that's why those women used to fawn over him sometimes. And he
Mhm.
put his suit on. He looked like he had money because he didn't wear expensive suits. So he's wearing inexpensive suits, which was what rich people used to be looking understated, who were Protestants. Do you
Mhm.
understand? They thought anyway, what's the point of this? Okay, so he went back to his hometown. The party came and talked to him and said, we want to run you for office. You're
Mhm.
good looking. Your wife's nice looking, really nice looking. And
Mhm.
you got a kid that looks like basically that could have been the poster kid for uh, the Nazi party, really, to be honest. My older sister, she's quite beautiful. Quite beautiful.
Mhm.
She's young, very pretty. I mean, yeah, not like me. I missed out on all that good stuff. But anyway, so she was like that. So they wanted to run her for office.
Mhm.
So I'm not being, so I'll think about it, right? And this was the type of man who called himself up to being a lieutenant colonel when he didn't have a college degree.
Mhm.
He was actually quite brilliant, which flew over my head when I was growing up because that was my dad. He was ruining some of the fun I was trying to run out and go do, right?
Mhm.
Because he didn't think this fun was going to be any good in the end. So
Mhm.
he looked at the situation. And then the next day he said, "We're getting out of here." He didn't
Why?
want to owe anybody anything. And when he came, he went to the hometown where then I was born later, and where I grew up in the house we lived up in. When he got there was a really pretty house somewhere else. The house wasn't really built good, but it was beautiful, beautiful lot, fruit trees and stuff. He didn't buy it
Mhm.
because the house wasn't good. The house wasn't good. He bought a
Mhm.
house down the street, and there was no thinking I'm going to move into a housing association or anything, which wasn't that popular then. But his thinking was to be as independent as you could possibly be.
Mhm.
And he ended up working for the government, but he never conducted his life in a way that would end up that he would have to sell out or be a slave to anybody. That he could always walk off his job. He could do what he had the best ideas when I used to listen to him sometimes. His delivery was a little bit off, but he actually had very good ideas.
Mhm.
Very good ideas about how to be a free man. So his whole idea was to be free, and it's my thinking too. I want to be free. Well, you got to. Everybody's teaching everybody how to be a slave. Their advice is be a slave. Be a slave.
But the thing is, being, even people who, okay, I'm only saying it's necessary because people need to know that, there are these gradations to be avoided. Obviously, you don't want to be a slave, but, if the status is a bit blurred, like, oh, I'm not really a slave, I'm a wage slave, I'm not really a slave, I'm bankrupt, people think, well, nobody's a slave, but actually, they are, depending on their, different degrees of indebtedness. And
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and I think it needs to be more clearly stated so people will know, well, at least
But
I'm
it's
not good.
the
I'm not a slave,
thinking. It's
you
the
know.
thinking. The situation's not perfect. If you have to go work for somebody, you're basically not better off than a migrant farm worker, if you think about it, right? If you have to go work for a salary somewhere, you're the local. Even if it's a nice job, it's still you're a migrant farm worker. You're someone who
Well,
maybe
yes.
has a
So,
few.
so America should be encouraging independent businesses as they should in any country. But it's all being, they're all kicked out of business. Amazon is this monopoly. All these supermarkets, Walmart, stopping the family run mom and pop store, that kind of idea. And also because there are not enough people running it because people don't have families anymore. Because the slave labor for family is your children. You got to mind the shop or whatever. So, that used to be how society was run, and people don't seem to understand the mechanics of it. It can't be done because there isn't, that
It's the
kind of people
thinking,
anymore to want to do those jobs, prepared to
Claire,
do it.
it's the thinking is what changes it. It's how you approach problem solving. Here I am, I'm stuck, I don't have a job. I'm going to have to get a job somewhere, right? I got
But there
I got
has to be jobs for people that people are prepared to do, and no, options like, oh well, I'll just claim, I'll just claim welfare, which is still the
Oh,
option.
I
No, there's
know.
universal basic income.
No, you're looking at it from a different angle. I'm talking about the thought process. Whatever was going on in my father's life, right? He also looked at, is this going to jump back and bite me and enslave me more in some way? Because everybody's enslaved in some manner. How can you be the freest person you can? Isn't just age, it's a way of thinking. So
Which is now lost.
you don't run up debt on a credit card. You don't have a bunch of illegitimate kids that people are now going to sue you for child support. You go get one woman, you make some kids with her, and you build a family. This is free thinking. But everybody is thinking now, oh man, she might get me later. Yeah, she might. The way things are going, yeah, very, very good chance of that, because most of them don't seem to be dedicated to their man. And so what are they doing? I'm going to get a ship a wife from Ukraine, Faye. I'm going to get a ship a wife from Ukraine because, wow, besides them being awfully cute, I think they're more subservient, right? I'm going to
Yes.
get me a ship a wife. Okay, forget the fact that they can't talk to each other. And if somebody's going to marry you just because they want to up their financial stuff, they're going to dump you the minute they find someone else who can do a better job of it. You have to look at the whole picture when you make decisions about things. And people aren't, because they've been taught to be so politically correct. It's affected natural thought. You can't look at
Yeah.
a situation and say, maybe there is a problem on marrying somebody who can't understand the damn word I'm saying, right? Maybe that's going to
Mm.
be a problem, but man, she's pretty and she's white, and oh my God, she divorced me, and now I got nothing. They're ruining it for themselves. White people are ruining everything for themselves by buying into bad thinking that's imported. It's imported bad thinking onto their culture.
Imported from where?
It's imported from uh, it's imported from different different groups coming in, and then most people want to pick the easy way out. I mean, that's a natural thing for humans. You make something so things is easy for it, then they start picking easy thinking. All right, this is
Hmm.
foreign thinking to white culture, that the government's going to take care of you in this kind of a way.
Hmm.
It's totally foreign. Now sometimes you get in a situation where you'd have to go somewhere and beg somebody for something. Yeah, that happens. It happens, but they would be pushed to such a point of shame to do it, that the person who was doing that was really, really something, that they put up to that point of it. So can we turn this all around? I don't know. I hope we can. But yes, people need to get married. They need to quit pulling their pants down because they think it's cute. I'll give you a really horrible example of something that happened in a public school here, if you want to hear it.
Mm.
If we're going to talk about how disgusting everything has got from that standpoint. One of the public schools had I don't know if it was a prom thing, I don't know, a dance, some kind of a dance, okay?
Hmm.
The principal was checking the girls if they were wearing underwear that were coming in, okay?
Really?
Yes, this is true. It got in the paper that this principal had done that. Oh my God, it raised hell. Like, what are you doing? You pedophile molesters trying to find out these girls are wearing underwear, right? What didn't get in the paper was what had happened at the previous dance. You want to hear what happened at the previous dance?
Please.
Okay, here they all are. They're at the dance. The girls are all dressed up their best in their skimpiest little outfits because they think that's what makes a woman look good. Okay? I'm going to look at
Hmm.
the trashy thing like I'm in a rap video. Okay, so they're all dressed up. The guys are wearing whatever it is they wear at the dances. I don't know how they dress. And they have the adult chaperones. Okay? So here's all the adult chaperones. There's the kids dancing, and then they did like you know what a pit dance is? Some kind of a pit thing. Someone's dancing in the middle, and everyone gets around them, and they're kind of dancing around the person. Like
Right.
you get a big crowd dancing around. Well, a
Mhm.
guy and a girl were having sex in front of everybody on the floor in this pit dance, and none of the adults saw it because all these kids were crowded around it. That
Right.
was hushed up. Nobody
Uh-huh.
found out in the press or anywhere else that that had happened at that dance. So the principal was trying to keep that situation happening. Yet they should have called off the dances. The school should not have dances anymore. But of course, parents would get mad and say, "Our kids, they're not learning how to get along with the opposite gender." Well, thank God. You know, they don't need to learn how to get along like that.
Mm.
Right? So yeah, let's get some, let's maybe have the kids. It used to be people who had money had their kids in some of these gender separate schools, and then the high school they would have a big dance where boys would, and they'd have the coming out parties. The people with money
Mhm.
would do that. What do you
Mhm.
call it? Debutante. Do the
Yes,
debutante
yes.
thing. People. Okay, all right. Well, okay, that didn't happen in my family. We were those kind of people. But they had that kind of stuff. She's now old enough to be part of society. 12-year-olds aren't old enough to be part of this type of society. We have a
No.
disgusting society now. So yeah, let's promote getting married. Let's promote that idea. That's a great idea. How about you get married, then have sex? Instead of, well, I'm still pudgy from my when I had the baby, so I'm trying to lose weight for the wedding gown approach.
Well, so secular Quranism can be useful in making the point that if you have babies before you're married, you're going to be treated as a sex offender, and will be uh, and will suffer corporal punishment in a public place. I mean, I think that will make them sit up and take notice, even if they're going to say, "Not in a million years, it's never going to happen in this town."
Well, okay, okay. Maybe that end result won't happen, but what would happen if a lot of people started thinking, these Muslims, as repulsive as they seem to be, right? If we adopted some of these ideas on a consciousness level of, look, you're 12 years old, you need to go put a pair of pants on.
Yes.
I was at Costco one day and there was a white guy there saying he couldn't control how his kids dressed, and his kids were in elementary school. He said, I really don't like them in these shorts, but my wife buys them for them. Right? Well, okay. We're not going to debate the badness of shorts or not here. I'm not doing that, but I'm just the lack of control, the lack of you're buying the clothes. I mean, a 10-year-old doesn't go out and buy their own clothes. You can't figure that out. This is the thinking, everyone's deteriorated thinking and stuff, and I think they can build it up if they look at the basic rules of Islam. You're going to get married, then you have kids. Ooh, the guy has to think he has to take care
Radical.
of the family. The man has to take care of the family. Ooh, that means the wife could maybe quit work.
Hmm.
Ooh, maybe they could be able then, if she quits work, have enough money to keep their kid out of the school that's now telling them to dress up in the opposite genders. Ooh, that would be an improvement, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
All these things would be vastly improved. Oh, my dad doesn't sit here and get drunk at night anymore, so he actually had a conversation with me. Do you know how many guys come home from work and just sit there with a beer?
Hmm.
Who wants to sit around somebody doing that? I mean, maybe they like doing it, but people don't want to sit around somebody doing that unless they're doing it. So now we have mom and dad sitting there having a beer, and the kids like, "Mom,
And
Dad."
playing with their phone.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's playing with their phone, looking at porn, because half this stuff seems to be really weird. I mean, it's weird. Like even if you're watching a video that's, I don't know. So yeah, I think marriage, not having kids, so criminalize it in some way. Well, that's an interesting idea, Claire. It used to be criminalized. I remember that.
Yeah, they can
You
remember
pay the
that. And
price.
that's the only sex education even adolescents need. I mean, that's all they need. Don't do it, don't get pregnant, and you won't be treated like a sex offender. How about that? That's nice
How
and easy to
about
remember.
how about since nobody seems to be able to keep their pants on anymore, even the adults who go to work? How about boy and girl schools so that the girl, at least if she gets pregnant, she must have done something out of her way to go find a guy.
Yeah.
Right? How about doing that? How about just doing that, and then you're going to get married and have a kid, so that can get brainwashed into it. Now, of course, some are still going to have kids out of wedlock. Yeah, they will. Some will, but not to this numbers and not at these low ages. And then people want to talk about Muslims are so horrible. They get married too young. Well, yeah, some cultures they get married younger than what most white people think is okay to get married at. But at least they're married when they're having a kid. At least they're married. At least the kid knows who their parents are. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
still a kind of improvement. I'm not advocating somebody getting married at 12. I don't believe that. I don't think there's any point to that anymore. We don't live in a society structure that's basically a bunch of subsistence. That's your own choice. Get married or take care of your mom. You know what I mean? We don't live like that in the United States, and I don't think anybody wants to live like that.
Mm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things to look at, but why not get married? Because they're cowards. The men are cowards. Why aren't women get married?
There's so
Because
many
the
marriage
women,
substitutes. I
because
mean,
the women are cowards. It's not just men won't commit; it's women that won't.
yes, because there are all these marriage substitutes. Gay marriage is a marriage substitute. You know, the civil partnership. It's okay to be gay. Yeah, I'll be gay then. I don't want to
Okay.
have a kid every time I have sex. So yeah.
Okay, there's that. There's that, but there's also this chase after materialism that they can't be happy. They cannot be happy. Back when I got married, my husband had a car. That's all we had. That's all he had was a car. Okay,
Mm.
and my dad actually liked him for some reason. My dad when he met him said, "Oh yeah, I like this guy. He's okay." And then his opinion was when people get married, you have nothing and you build or something. This thinking of, please give it to me, is ridiculous.
Mm.
Okay, so it's a man's decision. It's a man's decision. I got a job. I lost my job. I'm going to live in the car. That's an adult decision. Calling
Were you
mom.
married before or after? Sorry, were you Muslim before or after you were married?
No. I became Muslim before I got married. So what was I trying to say here? Oh, anyway. So anyway, it goes like that. The revolution in thinking will not be fixed by guys sitting around talking about how come the white women don't like us. That's not going to do it. You got to produce a better product, and the product is themselves. And Islam emphasizes building a better human and building a better self product. There's a different way to look at Islam than the way it's presented all the time. It's about making yourself a better person too. And what is a better person? It's what's better for life, for civilization, for the world. And don't you want to live next door to someone who thinks it's bad to rob you? Well, Muslims think stealing's bad. Don't you want to live somewhere where men think they need to help women? Then women wouldn't be as vulnerable when they're out. If someone's harassing him, other men will say, "Hey, leave her alone." That used to go on when I was young. Other men would actually step in and say, "Hey, leave her alone." Now they just look the other way. It got worse and worse and worse over time.
Because the men have turned into women, expecting somebody else to look
They
after
have been
them. They're actually putting
institutionalized.
all their knight in shining armor.
Yes, but it's a lot of things. They've been institutionalized in school to be passive. You get more in trouble defending yourself in school than if you pick on somebody in elementary school. They'll want to expel the kid who got picked on. That kid gets in more trouble. The kid that did the picking on, you're supposed to, let him discuss his feelings, and then you can sit there in the other chair and tell him, "I don't like what you did to me." What was wrong with just punching him back in the face? The best thing that ever happened to me when I was in school, going through school, which, I considered going to public school. It was like going to hell, but okay, I went to school. I had someone that was picking on me. It went on and on for 2 years, whatever, blah, blah. Then we got into a big fight in PE, physical education. We got into a big fist fight, right? I cremated her. Do you know nobody bothered me again all the way through high school because of that fight? No, that was amazing. That was amazing. I went from the kid that sometimes people harassed to somebody that they kept a wide berth from after I beat the silly putty out of this bully. She was just a big bully. And anyway, I'm not saying I'm proud of having to hit, but
You stood up for yourself, and it
I stood up
worked.
for myself. The principal tried to railroad me. He tried to say, well, she can't come back to school until she's ready. And my mom, my mom was like, oh, she's ready. She can come back to school. And he goes, oh, well, no, when she's ready, she can come back. In other words, until I find
So
out
how
these
long
other
did they
parents are going
keep
to
you
do.
out of school
And my
for
mom
defending
said,
yourself?
well, Mr. last name, I'm a housewife. I don't have anything else to do all day long except write letters. And then he just looked at her and he says, she'll be back tomorrow. Do you understand? See what I'm saying? Now this is kind of a weird story, but the thing is the thinking. It wasn't this back down thinking. It wasn't. White people didn't think like that. They didn't think I'm going to back down, and they certainly didn't go in there and act like somebody off a rap video where they're yelling and screaming and trying to punch people out either. They knew how to stand their ground. Right. So this thinking is what's gone. It's this attitude towards life that's gone, and I think they can get a lot of it if they looked at the rules of Islam, like you're suggesting, adopting them for themselves, and just forcing themselves to live by them. If they can, even if you don't believe in God, if you don't want to dress up like a Muslim, can you try? Can you go 2 weeks without having a beer after work? Can you, as a man? Can you do that? Can you go a couple of weeks without having a beer after work? Can you decide that? Can you look at your financial situation, cut down the expenses enough so that you are not destitute the minute you lose your job? Can you tell your girls, look, you need to stay away from those boys and you need to wear a little bit more clothes around them? I mean, these kids, a 12-year-old wearing a halter top and Daisy Dukes is pretty bad dressing. Okay, I don't care by anybody's standards. It's pretty bad. Hey, nobody's saying what do you call it? The burqa bag? What do you call it?
Burkini.
Oh, the burkini. You're talking about burkinis. I thought you were.
Yeah, because I was saying that it was banned in the south of France because it upset all those, French sunbathers on a nudist beach or something, and.
Well, because they see it as a threat to their culture. They see it as a symbol of saying, French women are whores. Why do they think that? You know why they think that? Because all these immigrant Muslims are blasting their mouths off saying white women are whores. It's enough. They need to shut up. People, they need to learn patience and shutting up. Shut your mouths. You come live in a country, if you think they're all dressed like whores, go home.
But I suppose in a way it's kind of true. So it's hard to deny. But I have this sort of mosque story to tell you. I used to go to this. It was a Saturday thing at the East London Mosque for the new Muslim circle. I'm going to mute you because of the clicking noise.
Yeah, my phone's about ready to die. I'm gonna have to plug it in and leave. So tell me your story fast here, because
Okay, and basically there were all these, white working class women who'd converted to Islam, and because they basically knew if they stuck with men of their own race, they would become unmarried mothers, and interestingly, there were Polish Catholic women who wanted to convert to Islam too, and wanted to try and get their best friend who was quite Islamophobic and that sort of thing, and then they would tell jokes about these Muslim men talking to these white women who wore hijab, saying, "Oh, you're not really Muslim. You're just wearing a hijab to try and attract us, and to, try to entice us into marrying you. But you're not really Muslim, because that was the kind of signal to say, I'm not a whore. I'm wearing a hijab. I'm not a whore like the others. So look at me twice, kind of thing."
Well,
That's the story, really.
there's a lot of different little psychological things that are going on everywhere with everybody and individuals and why they do things. Um, but uh, yeah, it's a bad situation, and I wish I could have heard more from White Way here. I just didn't realize my phone was going to drop dead and all that.
Um,
And
well, that's me.
oh, okay, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
this was my fake avatar to annoy Daniel Sienkiewicz, who doesn't want to talk to me. So I pretended I was a white nationalist,
Oh,
and at the moment I opened my mouth,
oh,
he
I see.
immediately
You're
kicked me off.
you're quite a humorous person. I find you amusing.
So
Amusing
are
and
you. I love your
thought.
stories.
Your thoughts are very I like your thinking on a lot of things, and I like it that it's really out there and blunt. I enjoy that part of it, and I like the way it makes people think. And I wish Muslims would buy into this. I wish they would buy into it, not so much as you know as this is a new school of thought, but why not buy into it? And why don't more people buy into it instead of
They're
thinking, well,
looking
that's
for
never
you.
going to happen. It's never going to
They,
happen. Okay, if it never happens, is it going to ruin your life any to think about this?
I think there's this cultural misunderstanding. The kind of looking for maybe the permission of white people because they think, oh, well, white people are so Islamophobic, they'll just freak out if you want Sharia in their countries, and we're not going to be accused of being Muslim extremists. So maybe they're kind of looking for encouragement from white Muslim people. So and maybe you could be working on people like Rob Dufour who cancelled on me today, and he said he was sick. I don't
Yeah, I think
know.
he's sick. I think he's sick. He said something to me about being sick a
Uh-huh.
few days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he is sick.
Right. Okay. Well, but I think they need encouragement from you too because they're also scared because they're minorities in a foreign country and they know white people don't like Muslims, so they're not going to be advocating Sharia for America or whatever. So maybe this
Well,
is
he's not. Yeah, he's not advocating. He has a different message. His message is, if we have a larger collective of white Muslims, it won't seem so foreign to everybody. And he's right. I mean, his way is the right way too. We need different ways in this if we want to avoid a horrible race war and a
yes.
collapse of a civilization. We need different elements that are promoting different ideas because one idea won't work for everybody.
No, but the many angles with which to approach a single idea, and
Mhm.
advocating a change of the rules, however radical, isn't the necessary first step. Because it's like, well, you're not happy because you think it's unfair. Let's try and make the things fairer for minority and majority and male and female and young and old and rich and poor and all that kind of thing. So people will not be violent if they think the rules are fair enough. And I think the Quran actually has all those elements of making things seem fair enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely it does. And the immigrants themselves aren't looking at it quite the right way either. They're seeing it as trying to preserve their culture and
Yeah, most of them are not intellectuals, and they're also scared. It's like we're just, a tiny group, and all these people who hate us. Let's, be really careful and stop our children from marrying out. I guess that's the immediate instinct. And
well, it's one group not marrying out, not do this, and the other one that's like, okay, how do we enter the political process? Let's become a social justice warrior because the Republicans were so against them for so long. And yeah, they were. The Republicans were against them. But why are they letting somebody else to decide their playing field? Why don't they play their own game?
well,
Right?
because I suppose that if they think simplistically, it will be the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I don't even think in that. I don't even think they're even thinking that far. They just want to be part of here, and they see they see their ticket into America as being anti-white and stuff. They're not
Because
looking
that
at.
is the culture. That is the culture of being anti-white. I mean, they won't expect it to be changing culture as immigrants. And, they have to fit in with whatever the prevailing culture is, because, that is the mainstream. They have to go with the tide because they're too sort of
But
small in
Islam
numbers.
itself
So,
doesn't buy into that thinking. Islam itself, the Islam itself doesn't buy into that thinking. It's really a huge problem what's going on. I took relatives. I think I told you before. I took relatives to a masjid years ago.
Mhm,
Both times they just wanted to run out of the place. They couldn't stand it. Right?
mhm,
I
mhm.
wouldn't dare take one to one now.
Have you been to one recently?
No, I don't go to a masjid in this country anymore. Mm-mm. The
When
last
was
time
the
I
last
went,
time you
well,
went? When was the last time you
I don't
went?
remember the last time I went. It
It
was
was years ago.
no, not years and years ago. It was, maybe a couple 2 years ago or something when my one of
Mhm,
my husband's relatives died. So
mhm,
I went and I sat outside and listened to about 30 youth talking about how much they hated white people.
mhm,
And I thought, this is not going to get them anywhere, because if you're going to center it around hate of somebody else, you're just perpetuating a problem that's getting bigger and bigger. But if you take it from the standpoint of building yourself up into something worthwhile, that changes the whole playing field. And white people need to start building themselves back up again instead of accepting decay in themselves and in other people. And they need to get married and have children to each other. They need to promote their own people for stuff, not to acting like not putting themselves in positions where they can't get out of some sort of economic slavery. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things here, but their thinking has to change, because they're not thinking in a way of people who ever get free would think. They're thinking in a way that perpetuates their own slavery, and they
mhm.
need to stop it. It has to stop if they want to be anything. If they want a white culture to grow again, they have to be something.
Yeah. And,
That's
and,
what
and they need a new system, and they need leadership to lead them to the new system. And so far, uh,
they need.
you know,
They need to go home. Don't drink beers at night anymore. They need to go to work and come home. They need to suffer in the way my dad used to. You know
mhm,
what I'm saying?
mhm,
Maybe he didn't want to come home every night, but he did. They need to, like, oh, the wife isn't so cute anymore. That's okay. That's my wife.
mhm.
I'm not so superficial that I have to have some, you know, 15-year younger sex machine because she got old. The thinking has to really change. The thinking has to change because they want it. They want to be true white men, and they need a new archetype of a white man. You know, Muslims need a new archetype of a Muslim in the West. White people need a new archetype of a white man,
Mhm,
not this
mhm.
decayed, wimpy version that's being perpetuated and that's being institutionalized with a school system that they're sending their kids to. And the answer is not let's just teach them to hate everybody, and we're going to keep them out of schools for a couple generations and teach them until the time comes for a revolution. There won't be any white people left if they keep doing that. They're not having enough kids.
I know, it's so
There won't be
silly.
enough left. I mean,
That's their plan. That is all they're reduced to.
yeah, I mean, what the heck is that? I mean, what is that? You got to be kidding. And really, why should I, let's say I'm a young woman, why should I, as a young woman, wait 2 generations before I can find a white man worth marrying? I have to wait two
Yeah,
generations. Is that what you're offering? Oh,
it's
I'm going to
crazy.
marry. I'm going to marry this brown guy that came into this country who actually thinks no one will give him anything, so he doesn't think about begging for something. Because there is a group of these brown guys coming in that think like that. And those type of people are worth being married to. So white men need to be something worth getting married to. Not talking about they got a big paycheck. They need to be worth marrying.
Mm,
Do you
mm.
understand? That's the culture needs
Character
building.
building. That's what it's all about. They
It's
need to build
it's
their character.
thinking. It's white thinking. White thinking is not hating everybody else. White thinking is building the self up and refusing to it's refusing to give up, and it's refusing to buy into any type of slavery. and they're all buying into it now. I am always sitting around amazed that it has come to this situation. I'm amazed by it.
Yeah.
Why on earth does some young guy think if I put some mascara on, girls might like me better? What the hell is that? You know, oh, they might like you better. Well, so what? What if they do like you better? What, do you have anything to offer a family besides a paycheck? Can they, they're thinking, because it's the thinking that's really needs to change. You can be a poor white man and be the best person to get married to, but not like
As
this.
long as you have prospects and the right attitude.
If he's a man, if the guy is a freaking man, being a man is not what I'm saying being perpetuated or encouraged in this society anymore.
But
feminism is being encouraged. It's turning men into wimpy women. Well, if you're not a lesbian and you're not gay, why would you want the wimpy man? Straight women don't want a wimpy man. They don't want some hardcore, horrible person that's going to oppress them. No. But that's a caricature of a man. That's not what white men used to act like. My dad didn't act like that. But you know who was the damn boss in our house.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But they're trying to be a boss when they have no reason to even be the boss. They have to be the reason. They have to actually be boss material. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta go. My phone's going.
Okay.
Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum, Claire. It's always fun to talk to you.
And we must do it again soon.
Keep up
Thank
the good
you.
fight. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.